All right, this is the third video lecture on childhood development between the ages of 3 and 6, and I want to carry on with cognitive development, keeping in mind that children think differently than adults. And so we're talking about the way the brain, the way thinking changes in these preschool years. The last lecture, I was talking about these concepts of centrism and egocentrism, and now I want to talk a lot more about, or more extensively about, this concept of theory of mind. So theory of mind is important because it enables us to understand people, to get along. It's important for empathy. It begins, now you want to get through this period of development with a solid theory of mind. We begin to understand that there's also another term called metacognition, and metacognition is a fancy word for thinking, understanding about thinking and understanding of learning. So children are also, through this period, they're also developing a metacognition. So they're getting to a place, they're starting to understand what it means to understand and what it means to think. But part of this is this idea of theory of mind. So somewhere between 3 and 5, children should come out of this understanding, then knowing that thinking happens inside the brain, right? That you have a mind and I have a mind, and so they can theorize that your mind is different than my mind. They're able to grasp what we would call a mental or internal states, don't necessarily have to match. So I might be smiling and laughing, but I may also be sad, and this is important because this is with a concept or a comprehension that allows children to lie. And we may not like children lying, but lying is a pretty sophisticated cognitive step, right? Also during this period, you can see some of the classic research on what we would call the false belief test. And a false belief test is the classic experiment. I think it's called Sally and Anne. And so let me see if I can remember how it works. Sally and Anne are in the same room together. Sally has a basket and Anne has a box. Sally leaves the room and she puts her ball in her basket. When Sally goes away to go for a walk, Anne moves the ball from the basket to the box. And then Sally comes back in the room. Will Sally go to the box where Anne has moved her ball? I think it's a ball. Or will Sally remember, or will Sally go right back to where she put it? Well, the answer is that Sally will look in the basket where she left the box. But children have but children who haven't developed full theory of mind yet will fail what's called the false belief test, and they will say that the Sally will look in the box because they know the ball is in the box, but they haven't yet gotten they're not able yet to understand that Sally doesn't know the ball is in the box because Sally left the room when the ball went from the basket to the box. Right? And so this is what we would call the false belief test. And it's that a child is not yet fully understand what you know or what other people know, right? Oof, okay. So also in this period, we have 5 to 6-year-olds. They begin to understand, well, it's similar to what I just said before, that appearances are not reality. They may at this point have imaginary friends, that things are different than they look. This goes along with mental and internal and external states. There are some developmental, environmental things that can influence a child's development of theory of mind. That's what we have on here. Tom is, for instance, infant social interaction. Interacting with a child interacting with an infant promotes everything, including theory of mind. Interestingly enough, different languages, but this does make sense because language is so influential in developing, language? The left hemisphere of the brain. And a child who is delayed in developing theory of mind may be an indication of other sort of cognitive delays. Autistic people, people on the autism spectrum struggle with theory of mind. And this is why they have difficulty getting along with others, because others have developed theory of mind and they don't understand the Asperger's person doesn't understand that they are doing things that makes the other one uncomfortable, right? And what we'll see later on is preschoolers who have a more sophisticated theory of mind and who are prosocial tend to have more friends and they tend to have better well-being overall. right? Well, I guess we all know these things. Okay, so memory. So during this time, I was just watching a little YouTube video actually on the infant, what it's called infantile amnesia. And actually, there's some skepticism about if that's even a thing. But the development of children's memories are different during this stage than later on. So what the research that I was learning about says is that up until about 7 years old, a child will have really good recall of events that happened before that, like events that happened when they're a baby. But after 7 years old, they have lost those memories. And the argument or the theory is that there are different brain structures, and as some brain structures become more developed and more evolved, then those memories sort of get lost. But the idea that my sense, what's called over here, we call it autobiographical memory. And autobiographical memory is just, it's the memory of who I am, right? The memory of who the memory of who I am and the experiences that I have had and my ability to recall them. So like a preschool, like somebody before 3 doesn't, if you were to ask them who they are, they're going to give you very concrete. They're going to say, I'm 4 years old, or I'm a big brother, or I jump high. And this is because there's this understanding of self that is not yet evolved. And in order to understand self, there's a lot of other abstract things I have to understand. I have to understand how I'm separate from you. I have to understand like my history, which means that I'm able to anchor my experiences in place and in relation to other things. And so the point really I'm trying to make is that autobiographical memory is an abstract thing, is an abstract idea. What children may have or do have up till this point is they may have memories that we would call generic memories and scripts. So they're able to tell you, for instance, the things that they do over and over again, those would be like the scripts. They can tell you the sequence of events or what it's like to go to preschool or to eat dinner, because these things sort of happen over and over again, right? The childhood memories. There's a theory that says that what will promote a child or the retention of memories and memory development, because see, memories are critical to our ability to be successful in the world. Because if you think about what is learning is forming different memories, right? So our ability to remember things and our ability to attach the new information and the new experiences to old information, this is critical to our development, to our cognitive development, right? But the significance here in terms of like the environment and how parents and the social are important is based on this theory right here, what we call social interaction model. And what it says is that parents and caregivers can help the development of memory of children by basically narrating their experiences. And the more that they narrate, the more that they talk about what's going on, and the more that they draw the attention to the details in the environment, and the more that they use the detailed words, the more likely a child is to remember that. Because the research also concludes or observes that we tend to remember we tend to remember the detailed things better. So the generic scripts have less, if you will, depth to them. But when a parent or a caregiver narrates and points out the little things in the setting for the child to draw attention to, it's sort of like the example that I use in my psychology class is memories get attached to things. And the more that you can anchor this event or this observation to something else, sort of like the more solidly anchor it is in the mind. I kind of use the analogy of, so like a file cabinet, right? When you go to recall a memory, you're like, okay, so that that is about my childhood. Okay, my childhood. Well, that's about when I'm 10 years old. Okay, I'm at 10 years old. Well, I lived in this place when I was 10 years old. Or it's kind of like a file cabinet. Like, the tax papers are in a certain folder, so that's where you go. And what the social interaction model of memory says is that the more connections that you can give a child to what's going on, the more anchors, if you will, the more solidly they can anchor that memory. So the takeaway is, if we want to help kids develop memories, we interact with them, we narrate, we give them words, we give them things to look at, visual cues, auditory cues to anchor what's happening around them to something so that they're able to hold on to it and retain it. Okay, I'm going to stop right there.